Our presenters today are Lindsay Cook, Larry Sloan, and Sue Marchese. A little information about our presenters. Lindsay Cook, who holds a dual credential of CIH and CSP and is also a fellow of AIHA. He joined the AIHA board as a director in 1999 to 2002. He was elected a treasurer in 2016 and then elected vice president 2018 before taking on the presidency a few weeks ago. Larry Sloan joined AIHA as the CEO in 2016 after serving as CEO with SOCMA for 7 years. And then we also have Sue Marchese, AIHA's Managing Director of Marketing and Communications, who came into the organization in 2014 after having been the Director of Global Marketing with Boston Scientific Auditory Division, and before that, Executive Director at Deafness Research Foundation, now known as the Hearing Health Foundation. So I'd like to kick off the meeting now. And Larry?
Okay. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So let me go through the abbreviated timeline of how this whole program got started. Literally in 2016, upon my arrival, we were approached by the US Department of Labor to address pipeline issues in the occupational health and safety profession. And it was this particular outreach that was in effect the genesis of the idea behind our ongoing brand evolution campaign. And the primary objective of this campaign is how we reach new audiences, people that are different than ourselves. And first, the idea was, how do we entice students who are interested in STEM to consider industrial hygiene as a career choice? And then secondly, how do we educate non-technical audiences about the value that we offer society? So simply put, this whole brand evolution is really an awareness campaign to raise the visibility of our members as the experts in what is increasingly being referred to as occupational health and safety. So this is a broad-based, external-facing effort. So over the past several years, we have met with members through task forces, formal surveys, focus groups, etc., to better understand how the term industrial hygiene is being perceived by stakeholder groups, again, that are not like ourselves. This would include business C-suite executives, EHS top management, HR professionals, and others. The output was overwhelmingly in favor of pivoting to a different term that would be better understood by non-industrial hygienists. So keep in mind, these are folks that have no idea that our profession even exists. So we felt the need to communicate differently. So then comes this little thing called COVID. And as you hopefully have seen, AIHA has been ramping up its efforts to produce a series of critical collateral materials that are designed to help educate non-industrial hygienists about a variety of topics. Proper use of PPE, for example, educating folks on N95s and other types of respirators, effective disinfection and cleaning of buildings which have been shuttered, and other topics. I hope you also are familiar with our Back to Work Safely initiative, which has garnered significant press across the country, including the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and other mainstream sources. Additionally, many state governments are now using the guidelines as a resource and posting them on their websites. In fact, the US Chamber of Commerce also published a link to our guidelines in their publication that reaches their tens and hundreds of thousands of members. This whole effort with the Back to Work Safely began as a challenge from none other than Mr. Mark Cuban, who I think everybody knows him from Shark Tank, as well as the Dallas Mavericks. He's now tweeted out a few times about our incredible efforts to provide practical guidance to smaller businesses across a variety of industries. To date, we have seen about 1 million downloads across all of our guidance documents. And this has really jump-started our efforts to reach out to, again, stakeholders that are different than ourselves. So with that, I'd like to turn the program over to AIHA President Lindsay Cook. Lindsay?
Thanks, Larry. Good to join you today. And I wanted to take just a minute to maybe give a little of the board perspective on this rebranding effort. as a profession and as a board, we've been having these discussions about the graying of the profession and the retirement cliff ever since I joined as treasurer, and even before that, seeing, you know, the gradual erosion of our membership. And when Larry joined us several years ago, one of the first challenges we posed to him is to come up with a plan to help us revitalize the organization and find a way to attract, you know, the new generation of industrial hygiene practitioners, if you will. You know, how do we get the young people today to participate? The next generation looks at associations differently than the folks in my cohort when I was looking to join AIHA. We need to figure out how to communicate effectively with these young folks and meet the expectations that they may have of an association, so that we can keep the pipeline of active and enthusiastic members going. Now, Larry and staff brought this plan to us several years ago. And as Larry said, there's been a lot of effort put into it. In fact, there were over 2,000, I believe, participants, members, others, staff, in forums, surveys, discussion groups, helping us get to where we are today. And I have to say that I'm happy to see the energy that is displayed in our younger members. New elements like women in industrial hygiene, the revitalization of our local student sections. There's a lot going on, and I think what we're trying to do is to continue to build on that so that we can keep AIHA a relevant and vibrant part of the profession. So the board has supported this effort and actually challenged Larry to come up with a plan to help us move down this path. And I think we're off to a good start. We're already seeing new energy in the organization, as I just mentioned, and I'm hopeful that we will continue to see a resurgence in interest in AIHA. Larry mentioned the COVID-19 issues that we've recently faced and the attention that is drawn to our profession. That only expands the awareness of our organization, and hopefully these efforts will help us continue that growth in awareness. So I guess with that, I'll turn it back over to Sue.
Sure, thanks, Lindsay. I would like to thank everybody for having sent us some questions over the last month since launching this entire brand evolution. Prior to the town hall, there were questions and concerns mentioned on Catalyst to direct emails to me. And we thought that what we would do today is actually pose those questions here at the town hall, and then help give some answers. And perhaps those questions may answer some of those that you have in your mind right now, and we'll do our very best to answer them here. And if we don't seem to get to your questions, by all means, as Thursa indicated at the beginning of this, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will do our best to address them later on during today's town hall. But I will start off with one of the questions that was received over the last month. Which is, one thing I should say also is that I'm not going to be answering all of them. As they seem to be applicable, I will ask Lindsay or Larry to share in that as well. But for the first one, I'll answer this one. The question was, the new logo is totally revamped graphic. What does the new image represent? What do those different lines mean in a circle? So basically, during the process, Larry and I had spoken with the designers and asked them to try to convey the continuous improvement cycle of Plan, Do, Check, Act. This also came through in many focus groups that our members participated in over several years, trying to see if we could capture something that was relevant to the everyday job of an OHS and IH specialist. So fortunately, what ended up happening is we finally came with a design that looked good, but I can honestly tell you at the very beginning, we did not hit the mark. So we had to go back to the drawing board and make sure that it resonated during the focus groups. Finally, we were getting remarks such as, is that circular movement representative of forward momentum? Is it actually possibly even the strategy framework of the AREC process? And we also were told that this new graphic really kind of resembles a bit of a global look to it. So that is a little bit about the thought behind the design and what the image represents for the new logo. So going on to another question that we had received prior to today. The question is, how did AIHA come up with the new logo and tagline? Was it just a marketing shift, such as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, or has this been in the works for some time? So, as Larry mentioned, coincidentally, as COVID hit, we were very well long into the development of the new logo and tagline. It was in the works for the past 3 years. We had actually brought in research experts to develop data to determine the organization's path forward. So it became obvious that we had a brand that needed to be refreshed. Lindsay mentioned how could we try to get beyond the membership cliff or the graying, as he said, of the profession, and how do we reach to that next generation? So that's when the board, the AIHA board, supported and moved forward with changing of the logo, the tagline, and the positioning, particularly the fact that this is an outward-facing public awareness, education, and recruitment campaign. It's not just a logo. Positioning statements that are on our website are incorporated in our new outreach campaign, and really, I think, represents a lot of stakeholder groups that we encompass. As I said, it's more than a logo change, more than just a tagline change, but it's about how and where we tell our story to those who we want to serve and who we want to recruit into the membership. Okay, the next question. Actually, I'm gonna have Lindsay take this one. Lindsay, does this rebranding mean a significant mission change for AIHA?
Well, no, Sue, there's no change to our mission. Our mission remains the same, empowering those who apply scientific knowledge to protect all workers from occupational hazards. The tagline has changed: healthier workplaces, a healthier world, in the goal of better articulating our vision statement and blending in with that. The vision has not changed: a world where all workers are healthy and safe. I mean, the health and safety of workers is key to everything that we do as a profession and as an association. It was not our intent to remove workers from any of the mission or vision of the organization as we went through this process.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question that I'm going to read the question as it is, but this was actually quite an often requested answer on our part. So it may not be exactly how you may have worded it for those of you who asked this question, but we're going to go with one that may be resonant to what all of you may have in your mind. And the question, I'm going to ask Lindsay also to try and respond to this one. The question is, During Kathy Murphy's remarks during virtual AIHCE 2020 that took place earlier this month, Kathy stated that AIHA's repositioning was not meant to take away the term industrial hygiene and that the CIH designation is never going away. Doesn't the divergence from using industrial hygiene in the organization's rebranded name effectively outdate the term a bit and set the stage for a rebrand of the CIH designation in the future? Lindsay, you want to take that?
Sure. I see no way that the term industrial hygiene is going away. As far as our name, we've been using the acronym AIHA for many years now. We've had a number of international strategies. We're probably not the American Industrial Hygiene Association. If you look at AIHA in the bigger picture, legally, AIHA remains the American Industrial Hygiene Association. That's how we're mentioned on our charter in the state of Illinois. It's not changed. We have not changed our bylaws. The new logo and tagline are meant to hopefully better articulate our overarching purpose as an association. As I said, the term industrial hygiene isn't going away. IH will always be who we are and a key component of our internal facing communication strategies, as evidenced by our I Am IH campaign in particular. To the outside, the non-IH public, when positioning ourselves to raise awareness and educate, recruit folks into our profession, we will just use the acronym AIHA. We need to acknowledge that many of our younger professionals entering the profession, as well as students coming from academic programs entitled Occupational Health, Environmental Health and Safety, Environment and Occupational Health, we want to make sure that those folks know AIHA has a home for them and want to include their professional titles in what we're doing. It's still about protecting people at work, whether we call ourselves industrial hygienists, occupational health scientists, occupational hygiene engineer, or any of the other many job titles in our profession. In fact, we find even on our own employment page, employment service, many employers are using other terms besides industrial hygiene, occupational health, EHS professional, and the like. So we're trying to stay current and keep that strategy alive. I had an interesting experience. As some of you may know, I'm involved in the NIOSH Total Worker Health Task Force that AIHA has. We've been reaching out to the NIOSH Total Worker Health Centers of Excellence, and we got a report from one of our liaisons, if you will, that they had contacted the center. And the liaison that was designated was unaware of the presence of AIHA and unfamiliar with the term industrial hygiene. So I think that really sets the stage for what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're communicating with these folks who are not industrial hygienists and raising that awareness outside of our profession. As to the CIH designation, it's a well-branded credential. It's globally recognized. We've been assured by the Board for Global EHS Credentialing, I still have a hard time saying that, formerly the ABIH. There's no intention of changing our designation. So CIH and the term industrial hygiene are here to stay as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome, thanks, Lindsay. Okay, so Lindsay, you've been on a roll. I'm gonna ask you to answer this next question too, if you don't mind. The question is, why wasn't there a member vote on what they're calling a name change? So why wasn't there a member vote before doing this new logo and tagline change?
Well, as I stated just a moment ago, there has been no name change. Legally, AIHA remains the American Industrial Hygiene Association. We checked with General Counsel. We were assured that there's been no change to AIHA corporate name, or no steps taken to change the bylaws or anything else from a corporate perspective. Clearly, any effort in that arena would require an amendment to our Articles of Incorporation. It would have to be refiled with the state of Illinois, and obviously prior to that, we would have to change our bylaws, which would include a member vote. Since we've not changed any of our legal articles of incorporation, our bylaws, our name, there was no need for a member vote. This is all about communication, specifically our outward-facing communication, as you mentioned earlier, Sue.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so there was another question I'm going to read, and I'm going to take this one. So what is AIHA doing to help generate greater awareness about the profession and getting out in the media? So the 3 pillars of this brand evolution initiative are aimed at non-IHs, and those 3 pillars are awareness, education, and recruitment. They're the goals, really, at the end of the day, of this entire effort. So to raise awareness to the general public about OHS science professionals and their value to the community through proactive media outreach, we have a very robust plan as well as tactics that we are going to be doing for raising awareness to the media through, to the general public through the media, excuse me. As you know, unfortunately, COVID has hit our world, but the good news is that it actually has impacted attention by the media for them to notice the expertise of yourselves, of IHs and OHS professionals. So our awareness campaign portion of this brand evolution actually started even before we launched it, but it will continue. The second pillar, education. We need to educate, and we are planning to educate key audiences in the C-suite of various industries. In our phase 1, we are concentrating on chemical manufacturers, construction industry, and first responders. And the goal is to talk about the value of OHS in the workplace, not just compliance with OSHA, which most businesses have no problem understanding and wrapping their brains around. But this is about making health and safety a value in the workplace, not just a priority, but a value. And we will do this by having resources dedicated to these audiences on our website. We are going to be launching a microsite called workerhealthsafety.org. It is not launched yet, but this is something that we have part of this awareness plan, which will be in the next 2 weeks. And we are going to be reaching out to trade as well as professional industries in construction, chemical manufacturing, and first responders, sharing case studies, information regarding the value of OHS, meeting with their HR and operations teams, and basically helping to educate about the imperative OHS in their workplaces. By the way, staff did not do this alone, and I want to thank the brand ambassadors from the construction committee, as well as individuals from various walks of life. Rick Fulweiler, Nancy McClellan, thank you so much to those of you who have helped us to come up with what we're going to be doing for these audiences as we are moving forward. We could not have done it without you as SMEs. And then finally, the third pillar is recruitment. It's imperative for the next generation of OHS science professionals, and it's to bring them into this industry. The way we're going to do that is providing dedicated resources on the microsite that I mentioned, as well as another microsite we're going to be launching later this year, which is called ohssciencecareers.org. It's going to benefit society. We're going to be talking about how OHS science careers benefit society and how individuals can make an impact on the world doing this profession, not to mention making pretty good salary over that time, which we can back up with our salary studies that we've done over the years. We're also going to be doing recruiting by reaching out to STEM organizations and professional associations of teachers and guidance counselors to avail them to our resources. In addition to an effort to pair up with ABET accredited universities and NIOSH centers of excellence in the US to talk about how we can improve recruitment for students into the field. And of course, last but not least, something that we've been doing for years anyway, but we're constantly building up our arsenal of outreach materials, and that is doing grassroots outreach by each one of our members who will partake in career days and professional development days. Those things are still going to probably go on regardless if school meets or not. So we do have opportunities to do grassroots outreach, and we will never stop doing that. So I hope that helps answer all that we're going to be doing over the next several years for this public awareness, education, and recruitment campaign. Okay, so I think we're going to wind up with our last question that came in prior to today's town hall, and I'm going to ask Larry if you could help me with this one, and that is, the question is, what is the impact of this public awareness initiative on AIHA and the members?
Thanks, Sue. So again, I want us to all look outside of ourselves. I'm seeing some of the questions that are coming in through the chat box, and I still feel like that there's this bias towards us. And I want us to think a little more globally and think about people that know nothing about what it is that we do. So the three-step process that Sue delineated, the awareness, the education, and the recruitment, ultimately, we're trying to fill the pipeline. We've got a lot of folks that are either already retired or getting ready to retire. The graying of the profession, if you will, I don't like that term, but the reality is that we're losing members every year. And that's just the reality of the demographics. And so how do we bring more folks into the profession that in a way that really will intrigue them, that will get them excited about the kind of work that you all have been doing for many, many years. So getting more people into the profession ultimately will lead to more members for the association. So we start by positioning the profession in a way that is a little more simpler and understandable to most people, again, that don't know anything about industrial hygiene. Occupational, environmental health and science are buzzwords that resonate better with those that are considering a career in STEM, something that is more relatable and better understood by those that we're seeking to bring into the profession. Then what we do is we're going to sell them on the value through our efforts, including what we've done with the COVID pandemic. Honestly, COVID has brought AIHA to the forefront of a lot of people's minds. Prior to the pandemic, nobody really knew who we were. We were behind the scenes. And so with the outreach and the earned media attention that we're getting, it's going to help us with generating a greater footprint about the value that we provide to society. Once we start to educate these audiences, starting at the business C-suite, EH&S management, HR, recruiters, all the way down to the students, then it is incumbent upon us to lead them through what we call the IH Pro pathways, the professional pathways of what it is to become an occupational health and science professional. Many of you started out as an industrial hygienist in the field doing sampling. You then migrated to other capacities in a management role where you began to supervise people. Many of you may have started out working for a manufacturing entity, and then you decided to become a consultant, either with a large firm, a small firm, or maybe even an independent consultant. One of the beauties of this profession is the amazing number of avenues that you can take in your career. And we want to excite the young folks that They want to do something scientific, but they also want to do something that gives back to society, something that's altruistic, and what's better than saving people's lives at work? So the message that's going to be woven through our outreach is going to be how we make a difference each and every day. And that is the fact that we can carve out our niche through a variety of manners. And as you navigate your pathway, you can take one of many different paths. You can stay in a very technical capacity, you can become a manager of people, or you can move more into a management capacity. The sky is the limit on the way that folks have navigated their careers. So that hopefully that kind of helps to give folks a sense as to how we're going to position ourselves, again, to audiences that are different than ourselves. Sue, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Larry. Okay, so before I turn this over to Thursa to read some questions that have been coming in live from the audience, I just want to let you know that we're probably not going to be able to get to all of the questions that are being posed in the Q&A chat room today, but we will be addressing every question following this town hall, and we're going to be pulling them together, putting together an FAQ document, and we will post that on AIHA.org, and we will be emailing it to the membership. So on that note, I'd like to turn it over to Thursa to share a few questions that have come in, and I believe one of us, Thursa, will answer the questions as you pose that, okay?
Okay, sure, no problem. The first one, I believe, is from Rick Fulweiler. He said, would like Larry to say a bit more about feedback from the C-suite folks as it relates to the term we use, for example, industrial hygiene.
Okay, so those of you who know me know that I came from the chemical industry many years ago, and then I worked in a variety of sales capacities, and then I ran 2 scientific trade associations, if you will, industrial trade associations, SOCMA, which is a Society of Chemical Manufacturers, small, medium-sized batch chemical manufacturers. And then prior to that was adhesives and sealants, so companies that make glue. And, you know, it's interesting because through all the conversations that I continue to have with my colleagues from those associations, because I do keep in touch with these folks, the term industrial hygiene is it's a showstopper. They think it's an archaic term. They think it's outdated, and it means absolutely nothing to them. So what I had started to do several years ago when I began my career here at AIHA was to maintain a dialogue with my colleagues from these other associations. And I started to kind of, you know, suggest some words that might resonate better with them. And so in tandem with the work that 88 Brands has done in leading the thousands of the AIHA members through this process, it's kind of been a parallel exercise where I've used my own focus group participants, if you will, folks that I know from the chemical sector, the adhesive sector, as well as from my days as an engineer, because I have a lot of folks on LinkedIn that I connect with. And occupational and health resonates much more favorably with folks that are in the business side of things. So the C-suite, which might be the CEO or the general manager or the COO or the head of EH&S or HR. These are the folks that make up that business C-suite. And so terms that pivot more towards occupational rather than industrial, terms that pivot more towards the health of workers resonates much more favorably with these folks. And that's why, as we engage with 88 Brands, we fed a lot of this empirical information into the thought process that went into the rebranding. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. To follow up on Rick's question, he said, interesting and confusing. Lindsay says the term industrial hygienist is not going away yet. Sue, in her discussion, is using the term OHS. So basically, he wants to know, what is the name of our profession? Is it industrial hygienists or OH&S professionals?
I'll take a stab at that one since I mentioned it earlier. And this is my opinion, certainly not cast in stone. I look at the broad umbrella as occupational health and safety. Industrial hygiene is a specific profession which many of us have followed for many years. Under that umbrella, there may be other things that are practiced. We find members who have specializations in environmental issues and safety issues, occupational medicine. There's so many different elements that fall under that umbrella, if you will. Industrial hygiene is clearly a specific term that we have used over the years regarding the protection, anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and control of those hazards in the workplace. And I see that to continue to be a piece of the equation. But again, I kind of see it as an umbrella term that we use to communicate outside. Industrial hygiene will continue to be a profession that we practice. And, you know, we will open the doors to others who may not be specifically referring to themselves as industrial hygienists, but still want more of the knowledge and information that we're able to provide.
Actually, before we go to the next question, may I just piggyback with what Lindsay said and say, Larry mentioned a couple minutes ago, you know, that this is really, this public awareness campaign is really a three-step process, which is trying to intrigue people into the profession, so non-IH audiences, to try to help sell them on the role, whether it's for students, early career professionals, people changing careers, and then to try and help them understand. So at the beginning, the approach is to start with some terminology that they may understand, which is occupational health and safety science. And then as they come into the fold and start to learn more, come to the website and get to know more about the profession, then it's up to us. It's our responsibility to make sure that they understand that there are multitude ways to get involved. And like Lindsay just said, IH is one of those ways, and then to hit the pinnacle of a CIH. So you as members are, if you are a CIH, you are a CIH, and you are IHs, but others who come into learning about the profession and learning about the field may start off as EHS technicians. So we would like to help to expand that and help them to understand that OHS science is a profession, IH is part of that.
I'll just, if I could just add to what Sue and Lindsay said. You know, one of the either challenges or unique aspects of this profession is that we call ourselves a lot of different things. If we survey 10 people in a room, everyone may have a slightly different job title. And maybe the umbrella term is industrial hygiene, but some people define themselves as a hygienist. Some people define themselves as a occupational health expert or an occupational engineer or an environmental hygienist. I have heard through my travels and in talking with thousands of you, so many different iterations on the words hygiene, health, environmental, occupational, and many other terms. So it's not a clear-cut defined box where we're either inside the box or we're outside the box.
Okay. We have a question from Dina Siegel. What can a member do to help educate our audiences and customers?
Sue, you want to start with that one?
Sure. Well, a lot of our members have been helping actually already by supporting us to make sure that the materials that we're pulling together are accurate and that they will be something that resounds with the general public. Another way members can help us is to step up as spokespeople. As the media has been reaching out to us, we can certainly respond, but it's oftentimes, most of the time, that we need to turn to our SMEs. So as members, it would be wonderful to have the membership step up as spokespeople for us as the profession starts to become part of the vernacular in the media. Another way that members can help is by doing what you've been doing all along, and that is doing your outreach and talking about the profession. In fact, this reminds me, when I first came to AIHA in 2014, I remember so many people, actually. Stephen Lacey comes to mind immediately, and that was, how did you find out about industrial hygiene? What made you get into this profession? I remember asking, and he said, it was word of mouth. It was through a professor. And almost everyone, ever since 2014 that I've asked, most people got into the profession from word of mouth. And it's almost like a small business. Like, that's how a lot of small businesses stay alive, is through word of mouth. But after a while, you have to start marketing, and you have to start talking about it and growing it. So we're hoping that this refreshed attitude will be something that you can take on and share with others, whether it is through career days, by educating children, or whether it's by doing workshops in your at your employers to talk about how people could get involved. But those are just a couple of things off the top of my head. Larry, do you have other suggestions?
Well, I think as part of the outreach campaign, and we're starting again with a certain number of manufacturing sectors, right? The construction and the first responders and the chemical sector. There's going to be very specific collateral, if you will, talking points that are going to be deployed for those particular audiences. And so as we roll out additional campaigns, we're envisioning there'll be specific talking points and resources that we can direct that particular audience to. So the way that we communicate with, say, the chemical industry is going to be a little bit different than the way we might communicate with first responders, and also with the construction sector, and so forth and so on. So we don't have one common unified message when it comes to these different audiences. Yes, we're talking about protecting workers and making workplaces healthier and safer, but the way that we position ourselves to these different audiences is going to be tailored to their perceptions, right? It's going to be a little bit of a dance via those different audiences.
I do have received one comment from E. Watkins that says, I totally support these changes. We are handicapped when the vast majority of people have no idea what we do.
Okay.
Let's see, we also have another comment. Scott Schneider has some concerns about the tagline, protecting workers' health. He says, isn't protecting workers' health central to our mission, more so than healthier workplace, a healthier world? And then ask, how much did it cost to hire consultants to come up with the rebrand?
Well, I guess I will take that one. As I stated earlier, worker is still front and center in our mission and vision statement. The healthier workplaces, healthier world tagline was one that was massaged and vetted. We mentioned these 2,000 people in various and sundry groups that helped us develop this. It was one that tested well. Staff may have some additional comments on that. Back to the cost question, this has been a multi-year project. We have funded this out of our IRAT project, which is a project budget, which is a strategic investment fund that we use. It's not a part of our operating budget. It's driven by funds that are made available from our the performance of our investments, which over the past several years has been pretty good. There's been a lot of staff time, a lot of volunteer time put into this. We did engage, as Sue said, 88 brands to help us. I don't know the exact numbers. I'll defer to staff, but we may have spent $100,000 on this effort to date, as I said, over several years. And the board has supported that as a strategic investment because of those issues that we were discussing earlier. It's critical that we keep that pipeline open and that we continue to attract and engage new members. But to the point that was made earlier, this is a brand evolution. As Larry just said, we are continuing to evolve our communication strategies. It's not all cast in stone.
Right.
How we communicate with these folks is going to vary depending on the nature of our audience, and we're always interested to hear what our members have to say. If there are ways that you can contribute to this discussion, you know, we would welcome that feedback.
Okay, great. I received a comment from David. He says, "Thank you for your leadership to move this forward. We have suffered from how others perceive who we are and what we do. This has resulted in missed opportunities for us to be our absolute best." And he says, "Please let me know how I can help support this campaign." We also have another question, so thank you. We also have another question from SKC Inc. When I think of a brand, especially a new brand, internal and external alignment is key. So when you talk about how this is primarily an external communication facing strategy, can you explain a little more about what that means and how you'll drive internal alignment?
Well, let me start with that one, if I might, Thursa.
Sure.
So how we communicate to these different audiences is about, again, generating awareness about the value that we offer society. And we're probably going to use some words and terms that are a little bit foreign to the traditional industrial hygienist, because we have to pivot the language a little bit so that we can better get on the same wavelength as these audiences. You know, think about your jobs. One of the beauties of being an industrial hygienist is the fact that you're dealing with lots of different folks, right? You might be dealing with somebody who's on the shop floor. You might be dealing with the head of engineering. You might be dealing with the business C-suite executive who needs you to defend why you need to spend $3 million on a health and safety project. So we need to be able to use language that is going to be more readily understood by these different audiences. So when you think about how we're going to be approaching the HR community, so that they actually can construct a job description that makes sense. Some of you may remember around Christmas time on Catalyst, that job ad that was posted from a Canadian recruiter, which likened us to basically a glorified janitor. I mean, it was ludicrous. We have to do a much better job of educating those folks out there who are crafting job descriptions for the next generation industrial hygienist. And so it's the positioning and the way that we approach these audiences that's going to be very different. And maybe it won't quite be in the minds of you folks as the alignment with what it is that you do, but the way that we explain what it is that you do and the value you offer society needs to be written in terms that these folks understand. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, this is from Garrett Brown. He says, "I have no problem with the name change or logo update, but I am terribly disappointed that we have dropped the motto, protecting worker health. What is objectionable about that tagline? It is short, simple, and clear, and states exactly what we do. It also includes worker health, which is the goal of the profession. If the idea is to include a global perspective for AIHA, we could amend it to say, protecting worker health worldwide. I am sorry that we're stepping away from the identification of AIHA with workers." And I believe to piggyback off, Scott Schneider also says that he's concerned about how the word workers got dropped off of the tagline.
Maybe I can just comment that when we were doing our focus groups with members, when we came up with different iterations of a tagline, one of the phrases that we actually tested in our focus groups was protecting worker health, and it was not resonating with the members. This one that we ended up going with, healthier workplaces, a healthier world, resonated more. So it was really the numbers of individuals who commented that that seemed larger, bigger than themselves. And so it was, I hate to say it, but that particular older tagline that we had been using just failed in the focus groups. So that's not to say that that's the end all be all, but there was such a high number of people who supported the new tagline, that was inevitable, that the data points pointed to that's our new tagline.
Sue, if I could build upon that, folks on the call should be familiar with our CPAC priorities, the content portfolio priorities. And one of the priorities has been changing workforce / changing workplace. And I remember in the focus groups time and time again, as folks were talking about the tagline for this association, they were wanting something that was a little more global in nature and something that was a little more representative of the fact that the workplace is changing. And so when you define yourself as a worker, you may not be in a factory. You could be out in the community. You could be out in some sort of a first responder, if you will, situation. You could be out working alongside public health officials. You know, the whole scope and realm of this profession is almost hearkening back to our roots, which was in the public health sector back in the early 1900s. So it's almost like we're coming full circle that we are an integral part of the public health spectrum. And I think that's embodied in this new tagline. We're looking outside of ourselves and what our value is to the world. It's not just protecting workers, it's creating healthier workspaces or places.
Thank you. Chris Les Davis wants to know, is the branding initiative domestic or global or both?
Sue, you want to start with that one?
Sure. The branding initiative is starting off here. So it is, it's US based or American, if you will, but Lindsay also alluded earlier to our international strategy as an organization as a whole. I believe that the positioning statements and how we are going to be portraying ourselves as we follow that international strategy will be supportive, will be helpful for the organization, for the association. So the branding itself was not necessarily meant to make us go global, but I believe that it will support, as we as an association start to move forward with our international agenda, it will help us to grow in that direction. Larry, do you feel good about that?
I do, and we've gotten quite a bit of positive feedback from our sister associations around the world. BOHS, which is the UK association, they've got a new CEO, and he and I connected about 3 weeks ago, and he really liked the pivot and the tagline and the logo, and he said this is really kind of hearkening to the future of the profession and how we need to take more of a global role. I just want to comment here. I'm just looking at the Q&A, and I'm going to call out on Scott Schneider. He's been very vocal. And there's a comment he makes that says the explanation basically that I just made about healthier workplaces is irrelevant, and those folks don't have workplaces. I'm going to push back on you, Scott, a little bit. I appreciate you challenging us, as you always do, and say that I wholeheartedly disagree with you there. The fact of the matter is that a workplace is anywhere that you work. And whether you're working in the field, if you're working at an oil rig, if you're working on the moon, if you're working in a factory, if you're working in a daycare center, where you work. We're all, Sue and I are working from our houses right now. So is that not a workplace? So I would say a workplace is how you define it, and how you define it is many, many different shades of gray, if you will. So, you know, I think we have to look a little more holistically at what it is that we do and not kind of color within those lines that we're so used to and maybe comfortable with doing. So.
Okay. I'm going to share one last comment before we have to wrap up, since we're approaching our 4 o'clock end time. This is from Fred Bolter. Those of us who work on residential issues in schools, public health, environmental risk-related issues go well beyond the classic worker concept, but all utilize generic concepts and source pathways to receptor tools. All of these topics fall into health science and risk characterization. The pivot is brilliant.
There's a lot of great comments that are coming across the chat box. And so we're going to carefully process all of these comments. And Sue, we will address each and every one of these questions, including those that we didn't have time to answer today.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, Larry. And I just want to also share some other comments. Of course, there were good and there were bad comments, not only today, but also in the last month. But I would love to share a couple of positive comments that we did receive over the last month. One from Florence Kuznets, the wife of Howard Kuznets, Titan in our field. And Florence said, I think it is a proper representation of what we all want, and that is to save the name AIHA and back it up with who we are and what we do. I'm happy to see that as a retired attorney, I understand the need to simplify and satisfy the need to explain what we do without the words industrial hygiene. My husband, Howard, now deceased, used to say it. It sounds like we clean bathrooms in factories. Hooray for us. So, Florence, thank you for that. And something that came from Kyle Dotson over the last couple weeks, he said, the tagline, healthier workplaces, a healthier world. This is excellent in capital letters. I'm not blowing smoke, really. This is good. Perfect, actually. So that definitely resounded. I'm going to just wrap this up with another comment from Chris Las Davis. She commented to Larry, I fully support the strategic thrust of the rebrand, occupational health and safety science professionals, broader EHS and public health outreach, getting outside our workplace four walls mentality, and a slogan that says healthier workplaces, a healthier world, all good and reflective of what we've all been doing for years. So just wanted to end on a positive note today, and
Sue, if I could make one comment.
Absolutely, sure.
This is an evolution. I think I said it earlier. We will continue to massage and change and improve our communication strategies. But as I have heard iterated many ways by persons much smarter than I, organizations that don't change are guaranteed to become irrelevant. I've also heard it tossed on the scrap heap of life or something like that. I'm sure you've all heard those things. We will continue to evolve. We will continue to be a strong organization supportive of our membership and what they do for workers and our profession across the globe, hopefully. And I would encourage those of you that want to contribute or have something to add to how we massage or continue to improve our communications efforts to be a part of the solution and weigh in. Let us know what we can do to improve our communications and to attract that next generation of folks who are going to do what we do. I think it's critical to our profession, and surely it's critical to AIHA that we do that. So thanks, Sue. I appreciate you letting me chat a little bit here today.